In this video I'm going to show you how I created this card using a dingbat font which I started off with in Inkscape, and then how I used that to create a cutting file which I actually drew. So this is drawn with the ScanNCut pen. So I'm going to jump into Inkscape and show you how I made the cutting file initially. So I came to the text tool, came up here and I typed in Saru's Flower Ding, and that's the dingbat font I want to use. Then I clicked once onto my page to get the flashing cursor, and I typed a capital letter G on my page and then hit the select tool. And that's now given me this shape, which is the shape that once I get to the ScanNCut machine in a few minutes, I'll show you how I recreated and made into the drawing file. So at the moment, this shape is 1.61 inches wide and just over 1.5 inches high. I want to make it about 1.5 inches high. So I'm going to make sure this padlock's locked here. I'm going to highlight under the height and just say 1.5. And because the padlock's locked, it alters the width as well. While it's selected, because it's a dingbat font, we've got to go Path, Union, and that will then make the file be able to open in Canvas, and then we could either cut it or, in my case, draw with it. So I'm going to just click on the page anywhere to deselect. Sorry, it's jumping around. Come back to the text tool. This time I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to start typing Jennifer, because the font I want now is called Jennifer Lynn. Once I've selected it, I'm going to left click once to get the flashing cursor, and this time I'm going to type Happy Birthday. And then I'm going to do carriage return and type birthday underneath, and then hit the select icon and that selects that. Now I'm going to double click and highlight both words, which then bring up the kerning options. This one, it's the one that says vertical shift, so it's the second from the end of this set of 3, and I'm just going to keep clicking the up arrow and it will bring these closer together, and you should start to see the happy move down on screen to close the gap between happy and birthday, and that's all I'm trying to do. And that's it. And then I'm going to, I'll just bring this back so you can see it, hit the select icon, and that's brought the word down closer to here. Again, I'm going to make sure the padlock is locked, and this time, at the moment, you can see this is just over 3 inches high and wide. I'm going to select the height and I'm going to say 1.5 and hit enter on my keyboard, and because the padlock's locked, it's made the word now 1.5 inches high by just 1.4 inches wide, which should be plenty for what I want. I can always resize it once I get it into the machine. So again, while it's selected, Path and then Union. Now this I can now save. I've got other things going on my computer at the moment, so the screen's jumping around a little. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to give it a name. I'm just going to call it text.svg, and I'm going to save it to my desktop. Then I'm going to close Inkscape down, come to the SVG icon, find that file I've just saved on my desktop, which was called test, and choose, it says it there so I know I've got the right file, say OK to my ScanNCut page. So there's my words and there's my flower. So I'm going to select the flower, come to properties, I'm going to change it to draw line and close that because I'm going to draw this, not cut it. And then I'm going to select the words, and again I'm going to assign that a draw line because I want to draw the greeting, not cut it, and close that down. Then I'm going to save the file here in my projects, or give it a name here, save it here in my projects, and then click download, and I'm going to put it on a USB stick, and I'm going to open it up on the machine. So I put the design onto a USB stick and then I drew it, and this is what I'm going to show you how to do now. So that's that card. This time I'm going to create it in brown. I use black for this one, and I'm going to draw it onto white card. So what I did, I started off with an A4 piece of card, which I think in the US is letter size, and I cut it directly down the middle, down this long section, which gave me 2 pieces of card, which I then scored in half and made into a card. Again, you've seen me do this kind of thing before. This was done in the February project video. You can use the design this way or this way. And in the UK, this is classed as an A6 card and fits into a C6 envelope. And again, in the US, I think the size that this fits is an A2, but I could be wrong. So what you need, once you've got this, if you want to create it exactly the same side, you need a matting layer to go on the front. This matting layer is 3.5 inches wide by 5 inches high, and that's going to sit on there. And then the white section, which is this, which is going to go on here, the finished size of it needs to be 3.25 by 4.75. So in other words, 1/4 of an inch smaller than this on both sides. But what I've done, I've cut this initially bigger. This is about 4 by 5 inches. And that's so that I can draw all the shapes on it, and then I can cut it down to give me this effect where it looks as though I've stamped or printed off the edge, if you can see that. So just to recap, this is cut at 4 by 5 inches, but we're going to cut it down. And then I've got some scraps. I've got 2 pieces of scrap which are going to create the pennant, and a piece of scrap which I'm going to use to cut this small flower that's a flower in the ScanNCut machine. So I'm going to leave that there, put all my bits to one side and set up the machine. Okay, so I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see this, so I'm going to explain as I go along. But basically I've got my white piece of card here with my piece of white underneath, which is going to be one of my pennants. Got a piece of craft card here, which is going to be the matting layer for my pennant, and a piece of scrap card, which is going to be cut into a small flower. So I'm going to load the mat into the machine. Take the blade out, get my pen holder, and you press the little thing on the back and that opens. Put the pen in and close that up and put your lid in there so you know where it is. And that's going to go in the machine. I'm just going to go into my settings and go to page 2, and I'm going to make my draw speed 3. My draw pressure 3. And my draw speed is already on 3, that's the default, and say OK. Going to put the USB stick, which has got my Seru's flower ding, into the machine, go into pattern, saved data, go to the USB stick, and now I just need to remember where I've saved the flower. Drawn flower. So what I've got now, I've got the flower on screen and I've got my text. So I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to hit the background scan icon and scan this mat in so I can see the placement of these pieces before I go on to the next section. Okay, so I know that I want the greeting on the white card, so I'm going to bring the greeting down here and just position it there for now. It's not vital, that bit. It's the flowers I want to work with. So I'm going to select the flower, come into this top left icon, come to here where it's resized, and at the moment it's 1.42 inches high, and that's fine. And I want about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6. So I'm going to say 6 here and say OK, and then they just come on, and I'm just going to randomly move them around. This is a little bit of a faff initially, but once you get this set up, you could save this file and use it again and again. So while I've got one selected now, I'm going to come back into this icon, which is the one where we can resize or flip or duplicate. I'm going to say I want 2 and say OK, and then just bring that one off on my mat somewhere so I can see it for now. Come back into the resize, and I'm going to take that one now down to 3/4 of an inch high. So I'm going to press the minus until I get down to 0.75. And this time I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 7. And say OK, and they'll all come on here. And then I'm just going to drag them and position them in the spaces on this piece of white card. And because I scanned the mat in, I can see where I can position them. And it doesn't really matter if they overlap or if they, go off a little bit, because we're going to cut this down anyway. So now I want to say OK, and then I want to add the pennants and the flower. So I'm going to go to add and go into the flowers, into this top left section, which is the flowers, and it's this bottom right hand corner icon that I used, which is A015. I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to take it down. I want it to be 1/2 inch, but it might not let me go that far, so I'm going to take it down as far as it will let me go. And it's stopped at 1.1 inches. I'm going to say OK and OK and set. And it's up here in the top left hand corner. And then, so I'm just dragging it into a space where I can see it. While it's selected, I'm going to go back into this icon where we can manipulate and change the size. Come back on here, and now it should let me take it down to 1/2 inch. So again, using the height button, and just keep clicking it until I get to 1/2 inch high. And I only want one, and I'm saying OK, and I'm going to drag that onto this little piece of scrap. I could probably actually get it on there, but I'm going to just cut it on here. Now I want to do the pennants, so I'm going to say OK, go back to patterns, and the pennant I used I think was in the basic shapes. And as is the case, I can't find it. Oh, there it is. It's on page 9 and it's A123. So I'm going to select that. I want to rotate it. So I'm going to use this button and rotate it 90 degrees to the left, because that's the way I wanted it. And say OK. And the first flag needs to be 1.75 inches wide. So I'm going to take it down to 1.7 inches wide here. I'm going to say I want 2 and say OK, and that puts 2 up here on the left. So 1 needs to go around my words, and 1 is going to be cut bigger as a matting layer. So I'm going to drag the one that I want as the matting layer here, come back into the top left icon. While it's selected, go into the resize, and this one needs to be 2 inches wide. So I'm going to take this one up to 2 inches. And hopefully they'll fit together when I come to cut them. So I've got all the flowers there that are going to be drawn. I've got a 2-inch wide pennant here that's going to be cut. I've got a 1/2 inch flower here that's going to be cut. And then if I zoom in, not sure how well you're going to be able to see this, but I've got my words here that are my greeting, which I also created in Inkscape. And again, the link to this font will be in the description box. It's called Jennifer Lynn. And again, I think I found it under font. So that's there, and I've got my pennant around it, and it looks as though my pennant needs to come up a little bit. So I'm going to select the pennant by using these arrows here, and then with these directional arrows, I'm going to move the pennant up a little bit and zoom in again, and it looks as though it's fairly centrally positioned. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to say OK. OK again, and then OK, and then I'm going to hit draw. And the only things that should draw are the flowers and the words. Everything else, when I hit cut, is a cut line, which you can hopefully see there. I've got the big pennant, the flower and the small pennant. But when I go to draw, hopefully I've only got these sections here. We'll soon find out. So I'm going to say OK. And it should now start drawing my flowers. Okay, so that's finished now, and for some reason it decided it wanted to draw these shapes as well, but I'm fine with that. It's not a great problem. So I'm going to say OK. I'm going to say cut, and hopefully now it's going to cut these 3 shapes out. So I'm going to take the pen out, take the lid off, put that away, put my blade in. Now my blade is nearly a year old, and so is my mat, so I'm having to increase the blade depth now more than I would have normally done. So I'm going to take my blade up to about just over 5, maybe 5 1/4 for this, and hopefully it should cut. All this card is about the same thickness, so I'm going to say cut. And OK, and move the machine back and unload the mat. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. I'm going to take these off the mat. I don't know if you can see that, and you can actually see a little bit of the brown pen line around it. Kind of looks a bit like it's been edged, so that's okay. This one's the same, but I could always turn this one over, which I might do. And I've got my little flower, which is only tiny. In fact, I think I've cut that too small, so I'm going to cut that again. Put some scrap back on the mat. I think it should have been 3/4 of an inch and I've cut it at 1/2 an inch, which is too small. So just do that again. Go back to home, unload the mat. Yeah, that's better. Throw that away. Take this off. So we're going to cut this piece of card down now to 3.25 inches wide by 4.75 high. So I'll just get my trimmer. You could have made this size at the beginning, but I prefer for the design to look as though the flowers are going off the edge. So if I do it this way, I'm going to chop that down to 4 to get rid of some of that. Then, so it needs to be 3.25 inches wide. So I'm going to make it 3.5 and then chop a bit off each side so I get the effect, as I say, that looks as though this printing or stamping goes off the end. Make this 3.25. Yeah. And then it needs to be 4.75 high. So let's find 4.75 on my. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut it a bit less. I'm going to chop a little bit off this end. And then turn it round and make it the 4.75. Okay. So we've got our matting layers. I'm going to stick that on with a bit of glue runner. And I think it's just run out. So I'll get another one. And just position this on top. So you've got the 1/4 inch border all the way around. Then this one goes on the front of your card. Make sure the card's open the right way round. And again, I'm just going to position this these two stick on top of each other. So once you've got your bits cut, it's fairly quick and easy. And then I put this on foam pads, and I'm using the Stampin' Up 3D foam pads, but any would do. But if you haven't got any and you'd like to buy any, I do have an online shop where you can purchase Stampin' Up products. I'm going to stick that on there. I've got my little flower, just got an old mouse mat, and I'm using the end of my ScanNCut stylus, and I'm just going to push into it to give it a bit of dimension. And on the back of this, I'm going to put a glue dot. Again, I'm using Stampin' Up glue dots because I've got them and they're very sticky and very easy to work with. So I'm going to position that one on the back of there and bring the card in and put that there. And just press, and that will hold that into place. And then on this card, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but in the middle of all the flowers and in the middle of here, I used liquid pearl in silver pearl. On this one, because I've chosen the browns and the craft card, I'm going to use liquid pearl in gold. And there's not a lot left in this because my little girl's been at it, so we'll see how we get on. Just put my glasses on for this, and I'm just going to put a little dab in the middle of each of these flowers. On the ones where you can actually just see the middle. And this is where I turn it round and put my fingers in it and smudge it all. Probably, usually. Obviously you could put gems in here, or beads, sequins, or you could just even colour the flowers in. But that's it finished. So there's the first one in black and silver, and there's the alternative in the browns with the craft card. So I hope you found that helpful. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.